The Extension Service and Experiment Station of the University of Vermont present your daily farm and home program, Across the Fence. Your host is Tony Adams.
And a special treat in Across the Fence today. Our guest is Gustav Verderber of Montgomery Center, Vermont. Gustav is a naturalist, nature photographer, and writer. Now, most people are unaware of how close the beauty and experience of nature is to their daily lives. The weeded-over vacant lot across the street, the marsh or woodlot at the edge of town may not appear to offer much, if any, wildlife or value as a natural area. Consequently, these natural nooks and crannies are too often regarded as empty waste places. Gustav has been exploring some of these low-profile natural areas with his camera since he came to the state of Vermont in 1984. Gustav, as you take a walk through the tall grass just beyond our backyards, suggest, if you will, for us some ways in which we might change our notions of these places.
I'd be happy to, Tony. First of all, we have to realize that if we drive, even if we're jogging or walking by many of these places, we're not likely to see what they have to offer in terms of natural history. Nature has a reticent personality. Wildlife especially makes a point of not being seen, so we have to take a bit of a special effort to explore them, to find out what they have to offer. But it's there nevertheless. They all have something unique to offer. And secondly, many of us still adhere to what I call the lions, tigers, bears view of wildlife. That is, it has to be a mammal bigger than a bread box to qualify. And that's not true. Wildlife is anything that's alive and living in the wild. Hence, a meadow, for example, might have as much wildlife as there are blades of grass, insects, wildflowers, not to mention the microscopic critters, the protozoans, and so on. So these are the two major ways I feel that we need to readjust our thinking in terms of our approach towards some of these less apparent natural nooks and crannies around the state.
You know, it's interesting. Burlington, of course, is the largest city in the state of Vermont. We think of it as a little bit of microcosm of urban area. Yet, we use the place like the Beltline, for instance, without realizing the natural feast that a person drives by every day on the Beltline.
Right.
You've been photographing in the wetlands area adjacent to the Beltline for the past 2 years. Could you tell our viewers about this place and what you think makes it special?
Well, it's been a wonderful experience to be in there, first of all, and I'd like to thank the Winooski Valley Park District for allowing me in there. The Burlington wetland is a remnant, if you will, of wilderness in Burlington's own backyard. It has a wonderful, rich population of wildlife and natural history, and unfortunately, though, zooming by on the Beltline at 50 miles an hour, you're not about to see everything that the Beltline has to offer, except perhaps some blurred cattails. We have to stop and take a closer look, and this is an example of a place like that where we have to explore it a bit. The wetland is a real gem. It has
bird life,
especially the wading birds are especially beautiful. The great blue, as we see here, and we saw a green heron. There are black-crowned night herons. There are otters, owls, muskrat, all sorts of things. An exceptional diversity of ducks that the wetland has to offer. And it's exactly this kind of place that I'm nervous about, because we have to stop and take a look to see what's there, or else we tend to take places like this for granted.
You know, those were beautiful shots that we just saw a moment ago. Were you as close to them as you appear, or are you using a big zoom lens?
Yes, I am using a 500 millimeter. I think the viewers will probably think that I'm within about 15 or 20 feet of the animals, and I'm not. I'm about 40 or 50 feet from them. And as you saw on one of the slides, I'm using a 500 millimeter and photographing from a blind.
Can you see the birds without getting into the marsh and setting up a blind?
You can see them. You can see them very clearly from the Beltline, especially with a pair of binoculars. The problem is that it's unsafe to stop anywhere along the Beltline. There's a very narrow shoulder between the guardrail and the Beltline to look out from the car. On the other side, there's a wide field, but then you have to cross the Beltline to see the Beltline. That's not safe either. It'd be wonderful if there was a pull-off, and like you have for overlooks.
Oh yeah, one of those scenic areas.
Exactly, where people can stop and take their time to appreciate the wildlife. But it can be seen. It's an exceptional place because it is very visible there, the wildlife is, yeah.
What time of the day do you like to photograph out there?
Mornings. In In the wetland, it's necessary to photograph in the mornings because that's when the birds come in to feed, and they're usually gone by around 10 o'clock. And they arrive at the crack of dawn at about the time the eastern sky above the horizon looks like a ripe peach, which is well before the sun appears. And so I have to be already in the blind at that time. I can't be getting into the blind when they're there. I'll scare them all away. So it means in the summertime, especially when the sun comes up early, it means getting in around 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. Yeah.
The light is a little different than at that time of the day.
There's
too.
absolutely no light.
No, I
Yeah.
mean when you first started taking photographs.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah. When I get up, when I actually am in place and the birds start arriving, you have that beautiful morning glow that is the best light of day.
That you don't get in the middle of the day?
No, all the colors are washed out in direct sunlight, and colors are much more saturated in the early morning. Meadow, if I go to photograph insects, that light is perfect for that, and the dew often adds a wonderful special effect. Insects are too chilled to hop or fly away, and they hold still for you. So there's lots of reasons to be up early in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little cold and uncomfortable and wet sometimes.
Yeah, in the wetland, there's a steep cliff that goes down, and you mind you, I'm dressed in this very cumbersome chest waders and all my gear, and the tripod and such, and I'm going down through the woods with this little flashlight to see my way down to the wetland. That's the easy part. Then you have about 100 feet of wetland muck that you have to get through, and it usually comes up to about my knees. And it's like a tug of war with the mud with every time that you want to move your leg to get out to the blind. And that last 100 feet may take me a good 15, 20 minutes and all sorts of frustration before I get to the blind.
But the satisfaction comes when you get your good pictures.
Once I'm in the blind, then you still have to deal with hopefully you're still dry, you shouldn't be wet, but it's sometimes chilly. There's the mosquitoes to deal with. The Walkman is a nice addition. You can listen to the music, and then when the first bird arrives, you forget all about that, and you concentrate on what's going on outside the blind.
How did you first learn to take pictures like these? Is there a special technique?
The photo technique itself is very simple and straightforward. Anybody can pick that up by reading books on photography. I studied with, I took a workshop with John Shaw, who's America's foremost nature photographer, and I learned a lot there. But the natural history, which is an important aspect of it, of course, I have a background in natural history and a degree in zoology, and that is a wonderful asset in allowing me to be at the right place at the right time when the animal is going to do something exceptional, and get close to the animals.
Do you have to be especially quiet when you're in the blind?
Oh, yeah, yeah. You can cough or sneeze or something like that, but yeah, no, you can't sing along with the music because after all, even 40 or 50 feet, sounds the animals are not so attuned to. The birds aren't. The deer, for example, in this case, yeah, you have to be extremely quiet. But the birds are not so attuned to sounds as they are movement. If I so much as reach up to refocus the lens when the bird is sitting on that perch, I might scare it.
The movement will do it.
Yeah, the movement. They're very keen on movement. That is how they fish. That is how they see their prey in the water. So they have very keen eyesight.
Not everybody can be an accomplished photographer, but do you have any advice for someone who likes to get, maybe said, hey, I'd like to get out there and do that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I guess the best advice I can give them is to take my workshop. I do teach nature photography workshops up on the farm. We have 300 wonderful acres up there, which is an exceptional setting for such a workshop.
Whereabouts?
In Montgomery Center. And I teach nature photography workshops. I also conduct nature photography expeditions for people who already know something about the basics of photography. And of course, if anybody is interested in knowing more about that, they can certainly get in touch with me. In care of the postmaster of Montgomery Center, Vermont. Mason Jar Nature Photography is the name of the business.
Say it again.
Mason Jar Nature Photography.
Mason jar. That's like those rims.
Exactly. Capturing nature and preserving it is life.
Do you have a particular type of wildlife that you prefer photographing? We talk about birds, but there are animals and so forth.
I'd say that the little stuff, the stuff that we tend not to look at as closely, the insects and in the meadow, that sort of thing, for several reasons. Because we do tend to think of wildlife as the large,
like you said, the tigers.
Wildlife. Exactly right. Yeah. But I like to focus on the smaller stuff. One of the other reasons is because it's right there. You can walk outside the door in most cases, and that's what we're talking about, is the ability to simply walk outside the door and have it there and take a closer look and see the beauty of it. And so in many cases, I would rather not get in the car and have to drive someplace or wait till the weekend until I have time to go to the state park. I want to be able to walk out the door and take a few shots. Sure, I can wait till the weekend to go chase the herons and the bears and the moose, but if I have a morning free, I want to be able to take advantage of it.
We specifically talked about the wetland area because it's close to us here in Burlington. But Vermont must be replete with areas where you can get this kind of stuff, huh?
Any half-acre meadow, woodlot that is undeveloped, that's undisturbed, has a wonderful natural history to offer. If you look close, there are wonderful living museums for teachers to use to educate children without having to go through all the paperwork or whatever's necessary to go on a field trip. You can walk them down if you have 15 or 20 minutes during a recess and put them in a meadow or a woodlot and see the progression of nature, what happens in a place like that throughout time. And it's these less apparent places that we need to be aware of. We know about the Mount Mansfields, the Camel's Humps, the Smuggler's Notches.
Yeah.
We need to start being a little bit more conscious of the half-acre woodlots. I remember 2 years ago there was a controversy about Parker's Gore down in Rutland. You know, so what Parker's Gore? It's this big undeveloped gore, you know. It's these kinds of places that have a wonderful and rich natural history that we have to bring it closer to home. We have to have it nearer at hand. Indeed, just beyond our backyard.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
There are those backyard places that go unnoticed.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite spot where you like to take pictures?
As I said, yeah, it's whatever's handy. I would rather not get in the car. I'd rather just walk down to the meadow, especially after a morning when there's a heavy dew that's settled on it, and find all the things that are in there that are very handy.
You got some close to Montgomery Center, I'm sure.
Right outside the door. I do live in a little bit of a rustic area, and yeah, and it's all right there.
There's some interesting photographs here, the real close-ups, huh?
Yeah, most of the photography I do is close-up photography, simply because it is much more difficult to get to the larger animals, to get close to them. It requires a little bit more money as well. You have to get in the car. You have to spend the gas to find out where they're hanging out. But the insects are everywhere, and the flowers are everywhere.
Let me ask you this. What do you feel needs to be done about small natural areas? Anything that we can do as a society?
As I said, we have to become more aware that they do, in fact, have their own unique natural history to offer. We have to take that bit of extra time to explore what's in them. And once we know what's in them, I feel that once we know something, we tend to take care of it. And we have to bring these closer to home. We have to retain what's here, near at hand. Especially here in Vermont, we shouldn't have to go out of our way to see nature. We should have it close at hand, so that on some days you get up 15 minutes early before work and stop at the wetland or stroll through a meadow, just for your own personal enhancement.
You used a big telephoto lens to get the close-ups. Does the ordinary guy who isn't a photographic expert, can he get involved without spending thousands and thousands of dollars?
I actually only own two lenses, which is a close-up lens and the telephoto, and I worked with the close-up lens for 4 years before I ever thought about going after the larger stuff with the telephoto. I'm not a camera equipment buff, you see, and so.
So it isn't necessary to spend thousands of dollars.
No, it is not. Absolutely not. No. No.
Gustav, thank you very much for talking with us. A very interesting program
fun,
here
Tony.
on Across
It's
the
been fun.
Fence.
Thank you for having me.